I love this helpful reminder of what okay. Shall we go?
You need some fresh glasses, don't you?
Oh, I've got coffee going here. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. So when's our cue to start? We're good to go. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Fantastic to see a lot of old friends here and to welcome our panel. One thing I'm not sure, there they are. I can see them. Thank goodness. I was thinking, where the heck are they? So I'm just going to say a few words to introduce the session, introduce myself, then I'm going to introduce the panel, and we've all had a chance to discuss what things we want to bring to the fore in this session, and I hope you find it interesting. And I know I certainly will, having read all the bios of everyone. So today, basically, I want to introduce myself and to say thank you first to the organizers for convening this session. It's really good to come together as a community, to see old friends, and to basically look at actually how to move forward in what is a fairly challenging environment. And that's probably the understatement of the day. But basically, on the panel today, you'll have representatives from a wide range of types of markets and country contexts, because we want to get a sense of how to work globally to advance workplace inclusion. In my role currently as the Global Programs Director at Stonewall, I really have had the privilege of meeting leaders from a number of countries around the world, and I'm really looking forward to this session, and it's good to be back in the same place with some old friends either on the screen or here with us today in the room. Before introducing the panel, I wanted to ground this vital conversation a little bit. I'm not going to tell them what to say, but I just wanted to frame it and to acknowledge you in this room, because there are many of you, I'm looking out at you, who are working daily to advance workplace inclusion through either major corporates or through civil society organizations. And so I hope that you will learn today about how it is that we can take on the challenges that exist across markets and actually learn from each other about the innovations that are out there. I think it's really important to acknowledge what's already there. There is a lot that's already been written on how to work globally. That information is accessible through a number of organizations that work all the time in this space. We've got some of them on the panel, either from Stonewall, Open for Business, our colleague Charlene, and definitely large corporates like EY, and our good friend from ELC, who I'll tell you a bit more about in a minute. So there's lots of best practice examples out there of how to navigate these markets, ranging from countries where same-sex relations are still criminalized to those where laws and policies are robust and moving in the right direction and moving towards non-discrimination. What we do know about this work globally, it very much needs to be intentional and steadfastly moving forward. This is not a time to take our foot off the pedal. Pathways to equality and inclusion can be developed and can be fit for every market. And I think that at a time when there's a lot of pushback, it's really important to remember that. This isn't just about laws and policies, it's about working with communities and to work very robustly with corporates that are in those communities. And that's what I hope our panelists will come to basically focus on. So basically the message of the session is we need to press on despite the difficulties, but to learn from the innovation and the wins that we have. And we do have a lot of wins. I mean, we see them every day in our work of people that are just working within corporations to basically push as much as they can to make them inclusive. So I just really want to tell you a little bit about the panelists. We were going to actually get people to introduce themselves. And when I saw their bios, I thought they're never going to say all that. So I think that really I do see this as part of this session to actually have some insight about the journeys that our panelists have taken, and then I'll turn it over to them with the questions that we've prepared. So first of all, online, we have Charlene Liu. There we go. Charlene's achievements are many, and you often hear that said when you introduce people, but really, here's a quick snapshot, so hold on to your seats. In 2009, Charlene co-founded Shanghai Pride, which is an annual festival run by volunteers that promotes LGBT+ inclusion, for which she was awarded the Shanghai Hero by Time Out Shanghai. In 2014, founded Q Events, which is an event management company. And in 2016, one of my favorite, Ladies Who Tech, a social impact community for women in STEM. And in 2019, a D&I consulting firm called DNIC that helps corporations build a more inclusive culture. Recently, Charlene was elected as an executive board member of ILGA Asia. Charlene was born in Malaysia, lived in the US, Singapore, and China, of which you'll hear more about later, is an engineer, community leader, social change advocate, and diversity and inclusion expert. So Charlene has asked me to convey that she is now embarking on a full-time journey to make the world more inclusive. I think that's a good aspiration. So, yay, thumbs up. There you go. I told you you wouldn't have said so much about yourself, so people need to know what you've been up to. So, Z, if you look online, because I really like your website, I have to say, but you'll find it under Danya Pekap. We've known each other for a while. I met you in my first couple of weeks when I started at Stonewall. So Z is the Caribbean lead now for Open for Business, which, as many of you know, was a coalition leading global companies dedicated to LGBTI inclusion across the world. We have colleagues from there today, Liz, so I wish we had a spotlight. We could shine it on them. And Z is also the CEO and co-founder of Pink Coconuts. I have to say, when I saw that company name, I was like, I almost lost my mind. It's a great name. An LGBTQ plus travel, I really did, you know that. I go on and on about pink coconuts. An LGBTQ plus travel startup focused on creating spaces for queer travelers to thrive. I'm looking at you to see this is going to embarrass you. But anyway, Z was given the prestigious Queen's Young Leader Award by Queen Elizabeth II for their work as an LGBTQ plus Caribbean advocate and as the co-founder of Be Glad, an LGBT organization focused on advancing the social, political, and economic environment for LGBTQ people to live, work, and play. And I guess Be-Glad and Pink Coconuts, I mean, you clearly have a knack for putting in very cool names for the organizations that you create. So very memorable. Z has spoken at a wide range of forums. I just really couldn't include them all. But in 2017, became a Watson University scholar focused on social entrepreneurship in Colorado. In 2019, Z was named the winner of the Sustainable Development Goal 10, challenged by One Young World, a worldwide competition which saw thousands of entries from all around the world. And for those of us who work in the space of Sustainable Development Goals, well done to you. That's certainly not an easy challenge to take up. In 2021, Z was the recipient of the David Martin Business Fellowship Award by the International LGBTQ Travel Association, and obviously brings a broad range of experience to the forum that I can't wait to hear, and really good to see you again. So clap for you too. Let's get moving. We're moving on. So today in the room we have, and it's really good to see you again, Ilaria Tode from another one of my favorite organizations when I discovered you, as you know. I'm a big fan. Euro-Central Asian Lesbian * community. And I was glad to see you today and to hear that it's growing strong. And you now have 10 staff. Congratulations on that. Ilaria is a lesbian activist, actively engaged in feminist and LGBTI struggles from a very young age. From Sardinia, Ilaria has navigated the gender roles and expectations that rural, traditional societies impose on non-conforming people and found a home in feminism and in the lesbian community and never left. Thank you for staying. Ilaria started out as a grassroots activist and community organizer, then has taken part in the national struggles and advocacy efforts of the Italian and international lesbian and LGBTQI movements. A member of the EL*C team since its beginning, and with years of professional experience in the European Commission, well done you. Ilaria is currently the ELC Advocacy and Research Director, D-Y-K-E, Rector. I mean, really, I was like, yeah, of course you are. There you go. I hope I did that justice. No, but ELC, I can't wait for you all to know more about ELC. And Danica, who we didn't have a chance to work before, but I know EY's work extremely well. It was great to meet you through this event. And I'm going to tell the world what you said. So, grew up in the United States in what is colloquially known as the quote-unquote Bible Belt. She began her career in Kansas City, Missouri, working for a Big Four accounting firm, where she was the only out queer person in her office, and also the only out queer person most of her colleagues had ever met. I have to hear more about that. I love this example. She considers one of her greatest accomplishments, are you ready for it? Being personally protested by the Westboro Baptist Church.
In case you didn't know, God hates Danica.
I love that it wasn't the Eastboro Baptist Church. It was the Westboro Baptist Church while attending the University of Kansas. So well done you. Driven by her passion for creating a sense of community for LGBT plus people, she has worked with a diverse range of networks and organizations to elevate LGBT voices within the community that are often marginalized or overlooked. Danica immigrated to the UK in 2021. Great. Where she currently, I was just thinking of the church chasing her out, but anyway, where she currently works as manager in the Financial Accounting Advisory Services Group at Ernst & Young. And Danica is a member of EY's LGBT plus network, Unity, where she also serves as the co-chair of the Bi Plus Community Network. So it's great to have you here from EY because they're doing amazing work as one of the major corporates that a number of us work with. So I hope that gives you a set. We didn't clap for you. Okay. So we started a bit late, but we've worked out like we basically want each of the panelists to tell you for the next 5 minutes each about their own journey and the kind of lessons that they've learned along the way about how to ensure there are inclusive organizations. And I really, in everything I've done over the years, I just think it's the personal stories that people tell and how they've navigated really challenging spaces that make a huge difference to our own learning and our own encouragement to keep moving forward. So we've decided on the order is the one that I've just read. So Charlene, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journey, working in a number of the toughest markets that I think exist for many of us. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and hopefully that was enough of a signal to the person in the... Yeah. You're on? Good. Yay.
Okay. You hear me good? Thumbs up?
We're good.
All right. So my name is Charlene. My pronouns are she, her. I am 51 years old and only been out actually for 10 years. So I guess you can call me a baby lesbian. Not so baby. I'm from Malaysia, and I have worked in Singapore and China. So Malaysia and Singapore, when I was growing up and when I was working, when I started my career, they have been a little bit challenging, I would say, to be a lesbian. And I've worked in the semiconductor manufacturing industry for 20 years. So you can imagine all my entire manufacturing career, going to work, going to Monday lunches was never fun because people would ask me what I've been doing the weekend, who I spend my time with, and I hated lying. And when you lie once, then you have to keep lying and remember the lies that you told last weekend, last Monday. So it was, I would say, after coming out, it has been really, the burden has been lifted off my shoulder. I do not have to go through that again. And I feel like that has given me more confidence to be at work. So, and also my background is, or rather, I'm a religious person. So I have not been chased out by my church yet, but I am Christian, growing up in a Christian family. And ethnically, I'm a minority in my own country. So you can call it double, maybe triple whammy. It's like all these layers that I have to cover myself with every time I go to work. So I would say moving to China, I thought I was going to continue being in that situation. However, China did surprise me, although it is a very conservative country in many aspects, but the laws and regulations there are not the same as in Malaysia or Singapore. There are no religious restrictions. And in fact, being LGBT is not criminalized. It's not in the criminal list, nor is it in the mental health list. But then again, at that time, working, being an employee, it was still very difficult to come out because I've never seen or I've never met anybody else like me who in manufacturing who have come out before. But something happened. I started Shanghai Pride with a bunch of friends, so we were all volunteers. And throughout the career, well, I wouldn't say it's a career. It was actually the gay job, right? I had my day job, and then that was my gay job. It actually helped me to understand who I am, to meet with other people who are like me. And then in the course of those years, I accepted myself, I embraced who I am, and then I had found the courage to come out. Coming out to friends, way easier than coming out to colleagues or my family. But throughout the years that happened, and today I guess I'm a loud and proud lesbian, or especially on Lesbian Visibility Week. So what happened after that was I figured that, well, I wanted to do something more. I wanted the community to understand more about the LGBT people, and also more about myself, my experiences. So I decided to turn my passion into business, and that's where I am today. I hope and I hope that I can continue my work to collaborate, to partner with companies, to be more inclusive to LGBT plus employees. Now, I have to say, if you are or when you are inclusive to the LGBT plus employees, that does not mean that you need them to be out, but it gives a safe space. It gives the opportunity for us to be able to be ourselves. Back to you, Leanne.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's super helpful. I think we'll circle back on the specifics of some of the markets that you work in and what you've seen as maybe some cut-throughs or breakthroughs. So moving from your part of the world to you, Z, I mean, you've worked globally, but one of the things we thought would be really good for you to talk about today is the Caribbean and what your journey has been like, definitely as starting up businesses, but also doing a lot to empower and enable other organizations, both in the region and I think the stateside too, to be inclusive employers. So go for it.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. So I'm Z, Donya Pegot, and I'm from Barbados. How I got started really was at university when I was around 19 years old. I'm 34 now, so it's been a while. And I was humanities and education representative at the student union, and I put on a panel discussion it was around LGBT rights in the Caribbean, very broad, and I was really scared around it because, something like that didn't happen at the University of the West Indies back then. And it was a real success. I was very scared about what was going to happen, but, it turns out the university was very inclusive. And then coming out of that, what happened is that, like after panel discussions, you find people kind of gather and have their conversations. And from there came the university organization, Quiche. It's called Queers at UWI Cave Hill. Now, nobody wanted to put their names to be president, vice president, to have it registered organization, except for me. So we just left it, we kept it online at the beach, and we just had these really cool meetings. And then from there, I realized that a lot of, folks across the island of Barbados wanted to join this university group, unofficial group. And so that's where Be Glad was formed, the Barbados Gays, Lesbians, and All Sexualities Against Discrimination. So I led that organization for about 8 years. And then I started to recognize that, in the Caribbean, we were having struggles with funding, and we had, a lot of young people wanting employment. But at the same time, I was working at a travel company, a destination management company at the same time, and recognizing, hey, there were so many people who were coming, like about 5%. It was incentive travel. And there were about 5% of these people who were queer. So I felt like there was something here around LGBT travel and how it can create more inclusive societies across the Caribbean. Tourism is the bread and butter of the Caribbean. That's the real income generator of the region. So when I started to read and learn more about LGBT travel, then I figured, okay, there needs to be some kind of connection here that can really change lives and change economies, create jobs, and be that robust. And so I embarked on the Pink Coconuts project, which is now pinkcoconuts.com, about 5-6 years later. The pandemic happened, so a lot happened, and then I joined Open for Business, where I think most people know Open for Business here. I'm actually transitioning out of the role as Caribbean lead at Open for Business, but just recognizing the value of business in any given society, and how using the power of business to create more inclusive societies has changed the game. Because as a advocate for so long, what I recognize is that I made a human rights argument, non-discrimination argument, amongst the politicians and amongst different parts of society across the region, and nothing received the attention of people outside the community like the economic argument. And so coming out of the Pink Coconuts project and joining Open for Business, there's this marriage where I felt like this economic and business argument was really beginning to change the conversation. And I've been committed to inclusion in the Caribbean ever since, using tourism And as I now transition out of my role at Open for Business to really take on the mantle and the mission of Pink Coconuts full time, it's really been something to talk to hoteliers and talk to the business community and connect that to local community to create more inclusive societies. So that's really my journey, and that's really my thing. That's my spiel. And it's my life's mission to create inclusive societies through business and travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody's getting clapped. I think one of the things that we really wanted to draw out is to just be really mindful that, I think, Z, the first time we worked together was doing a workshop with civil society that was gathered from across a number of worlds. A number of countries in the world, and there was quite a concern on the part of civil society leaders about working with business and basically embracing the opportunities that there were. And I'm looking at some of my colleagues who are in business who know that well. So one of the things that we found is that it's really important to actually support civil society organizations to work robustly with business to kind of even the playing field, to actually so that they feel enabled, and not to be you need to be concerned about pinkwashing, but obviously to be concerned about taking up the opportunities that there are there with business as well as governments. They're just a key actors. So Ilaria, you work with an organization that covers a very, very broad number of types of countries and markets. So we were hoping that Ilaria's intervention on behalf of ELC would be about to talk about what that means for the challenge of workplace inclusion for LGBTQI plus women and non-binary people to both enter workplaces, remain, and be sustained. So, a small topic, obviously. In 5 minutes, what can you do?
You have 2 or 3 hours now.
Exactly. Cheers.
No, indeed. So ELC, we are a network of organizations and activists who focus on LGBTI issue. We use the word lesbian as an umbrella term. That's how I will use it today. But so what we do as a lesbian umbrella organization is that we try to connect all these different organizations throughout Europe and Central Asia, so a very broad, very diverse region, to, let's say, advocacy spaces, decision-making spaces, media, at European and global level. And we do this in different ways. Of course, there is a level of which is capacity building for civil society. The lesbian organizing has been widely underfunded and undersupported for a very, very long time. So there is a real need of capacity development and resource, so both in terms of financial resource, but also knowledge and expertise. And then another part of our work is really our work with institutions. And for that, one of the things we do is research a lot, because there is a data gap on women in general, but especially on women of the LGBTI community. We then do the classical advocacy work of going and speaking with these stakeholders, and we also try to really bring the activists to the institution. The week that was just over now, we were in Brussels with over 30 of our members. We have more than 130. We couldn't bring them all, but we had a good number of them coming in Brussels to meet with the representative of the EU institutions, because the EU election are coming, and and I know that also UK election are coming, so everyone is very, very nervous about election with very, very good reasons. But in general, it was important for us that activists access those spaces. And in general, access of spaces for lesbians is a very important topic. Lesbians are not supposed to be in the public space because we are women, first of all, but also we are perceived as women if you are a non-binary person, but also because we are a member of the LGBTI community, and so we should be ashamed of ourselves. We should hide in certain country. We are criminals just because of what we are. So there is a broad range of issues. When we speak about accessibility in Europe and Central Asia, we are speaking about Sweden, but we're also speaking about Italy or Romania or Kazakhstan. And of course, the difference among these 4 countries are huge. So it's very difficult to draw general, let's say, issue. What I would like to point out here today is that lesbians are or are perceived as women in the workplace. And this means several things. It means, first of all, that lesbians are subject to the gender pay gap. lesbians are more likely to be sexually harassed at work. Lesbians are more likely to be in precarious employment and are more likely, because they are part of the LGBTI community, to fall into black markets or unregulated job, being it sex work, but not only. So in general, there is an issue with this intersection of being a woman, which creates some barrier, and also being part of the LGBTI community, which creates some additional barrier. All these barriers add up in a way which is very, very complicated. And of course, depending on how, lesbophobic or misogynistic a society is, or what shade of misogyny and lesbophobia a society has, these become more important. So it becomes more important you're a woman, or become more important you're a member of the LGBTI community. Apart from that, there is also an element which I think is very important to not forget, which is the way in which we appear. We are discriminated in the job market, not only because we are lesbians, but also because we look like lesbians. We look like members of the LGBTI community, which also means that straight women who look like lesbian will be subject to the same oppression that we are. And of course, for someone who looks this masculine and come from a rural community, I had this a lot in my personal life, this kind of injunction to be professional. And in my case, being professional was to look feminine, because a woman or a person who is perceived as a woman who does not look feminine, it's weird. And you cannot be weird in the job when you are a professional. Then there is also the other aspect that I was talking about, which is in case your gender expression is feminine. Because in case your gender expression is feminine, then we know, we have some data, we made some qualitative study on this. We know that the experience of feminine people in the job, in the workplace, is often linked with sexual harassment, is often linked with sexualization and objectification of lesbian identities. So this, of course, adds up to a situation in which you find yourself that you have to protect yourself, and often invisibility is a form of protection, especially in those situations that are more, in those contexts that are more hostile. And then there is a third issue, which is the fact that women are often in jobs that are in care jobs, and especially jobs that are connected with children. And we are now into a political and geopolitical situation where children rights are put, like children, we are a danger for children as LGBTI people. And this means that if you work with children and you are part of the LGBTI community, and most of the people who work with children are women, this means that your identity is going to become a danger for your job. There are realities. In Russia, there are cases who are documented, but it's a reality in many countries where there is a strong, powerful anti-gender movement where teachers have been fired or disciplined at work because parents groups, which are fueled by far-right anti-gender discourse, are targeting those teachers, creating a dossier on them, and then sending it to their employer. And that, of course, means in some cases that you are fired, in some others that you are really unsafe in school or with the children that you are working with. So all of this, of course, is, again, a matter which is both a question of gender, because most of these people are women because of the way in which our patriarchal society works, and, of course, also a question of LGBTI. Women who go outside, women and people who go outside the boundaries of gender will be punished in this way. And, of course, the job market is a place where this punishment is very present. And then, finally, on the precarious employment aspect, we have countries in Europe that have gone a very long way into making the job market very precarious. Because of the economic crisis, I'm thinking about Italy, I'm thinking about Greece from Western Europe, but I'm also thinking about the country in Eastern Europe where this precarious employment is a thing. So if your job contract is very unsafe, if the worker rights are very limited, it's going to be extremely easy to discriminate you. And it's going to be very difficult, even if you have law in place to protect you, to prove that there was a discrimination, because if you can be dismissed from one day to the other, or your contract can be ended tomorrow morning, and I don't need to really provide a justification, then it's much more difficult to defend yourself from this kind of action by employer. So throughout, I think that there are places where things are going great, and I was so happy to hear what Nancy was sharing at the beginning of this session about the situation here and the fact that there is a good percentage of people here who feel super safe, and still a good percentage of people who don't feel safe. But I feel that there is more that we can do in Europe and Central Asia to improve life of lesbians, LGBTQIA women, more than what we are doing at the moment.
Okay. Thank you so much for that intervention. I mean, you know, the Balkans, Eastern Central Europe, the stands wrapped up into 5 minutes. Thank you for doing that. And I think one of the things that we do have time to circle back to in the next round of Q&A, because it's something that came up too with you, Z, about this need for respectability and professionalism, that I think it's really how you appear, but also the whole issue of precarious employment. And I think there are a number of corporates here to think about. A lot of UK globals that are headquartered here in the UK, they're headquartered here, they have a footprint in a number of these countries. So I think it's really important to look to them for their leadership and what can you do constructively through your workplaces, you know, across these countries that will actually address that, because the precarious employment issue is understudied. It's very hard to get any data, but it's absolutely, when you speak with colleagues in NGOs around the world, it's one of the biggest things. A lot of people had to create their own employment, or they're in precarious jobs and streamed into certain sectors, which can be very, very dangerous for them. So speaking of that, then now, with EY, which has a huge global footprint and is actually placing professionals all around the world. I mean, sometimes in countries that are very, very dangerous or very challenging for people to work and live in. I was really hoping you could share with us the kind of strategies that you take at EY to deal with that complexity of being in a massive global corporation with folks that deserve to basically work in these roles but might not necessarily be a good fit given the country context. So,
yeah.
Tanika.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, a huge caveat at the beginning of this to just say, like, obviously, EY is not a perfect organization, and that there's more that we can be doing, but there are some great things that I'm really proud of to work for EY. Namely, I think one of the things we're really great at is quick reaction to emergency situations. So, for example, when the anti-homosexuality conversation was being started in Uganda, there was an alert sent out to all of our employees there, basically asking if people didn't feel safe to get in touch, and resources were provided in order to support our colleagues, you know, like live on the ground, and then as well to the rest of the globe, we were sent alerts about, you know, like, if you know someone there and you need counseling help, please reach out. If this is bothering you, just from a general, the world is going to hell kind of way, like, here's some services as well. Or if you have someone in Uganda who needs to be immediately removed, right, like, how can we support you in doing that? And I think the movement of people is something EY does really well. I know, actually, after our conversation the other day, I was talking with some colleagues, and I know that we have helped trans folks in countries where trans healthcare is not accessible, do secondments in countries where trans healthcare is accessible, which, you know, for that person is a really big deal for them. And I know, oh God, it has to happen, like, at least once a week, where someone who lives in a country where homosexuality is illegal is being threatened by, you know, someone in their life with exposure, and they can reach out to very visible links within our intranet to folks that live in a country where, you know, being homosexual is not illegal, and we can enact a very quick transfer. And as someone who's immigrated from one country to another, I will say the EY process is so easy. They book airfare and your transportation to the airport and temporary housing when you get there and a stipend to support that. So for folks that maybe don't have, like, the financial means to move countries quickly, that's really great. I also think we do a really good job of kind of globally considering LGBTQ policies. I think we do a bit of what's known as an embassy model. So for those of you who don't know what that is, our kind of, I don't know, loose strategy is that our offices are safe places. Within the office, we'll protect you and we affirm your right to be who you are. However, there's not as much the kind of discourse around, okay, should we pull out our business completely from this country because homosexuality is illegal, providing more of a safe haven rather than that formal that advocacy model of removing presence. And I do think when we talk about how corporations should respond to things, it's really tricky, right? Because I don't think that there really is like a great answer. But one thing I really want to stress personally is I think a lot of times when we do activism here in the UK or my former home of the US, we have kind of these very Western, probably predominantly white ideas of what activism looks like. And then we seem to have this natural tendency of, okay, well, it worked here, so it's going to work here as well. In every country where homosexuality is illegal, there are people who are LGBTQ, right? And they're doing the work, and there's activists everywhere we are. And so I think it's really important that if companies are considering taking an action somewhere else, that they're listening to activists on the ground, they're getting community organizers, seats at the table if they want a seat at the table, or in businesses' least favorite answer is injecting them with cash, because that truly is what makes the biggest difference. So for those of you who want to know how to make a difference, putting your money where your mouth is the best way to go, I think.
Can I just ask one follow-up? Can you say a little bit about the importance of staff networks working inside such a large organization as that? Like just so people have an understanding of what that looks like and what they can do to create change.
Yeah, absolutely. And our network is, in the UK at least, is set up like pretty uniquely, and I've never seen anything like it before, and it's super fun. So under our umbrella of the Unity Network, we have different communities as well, and each of these communities has a lead. So we have a gay and lesbian women's network, a gay men's network, a bi plus community, a trans and non-binary community, as well as an A plus community. And I think this setup ensures that nobody gets forgotten in the year agenda for LGBTQ rights. There's always someone to go to with questions. If someone's struggling with coming out, they know that this person on this email, on this intranet website, is someone who can somewhat understand what they're going through. I lead the Bi Plus network at EY, and I hear from a lot of bi men, actually, that we're the only place where they're open at all, because EY is so supportive of LGBTQ rights, and if someone were to say something homophobic, transphobic, biphobic to you at work, there would be severe consequences for that person. Mm-hmm. And so having the firm, having your back and being so vocally supportive creates this kind of safe environment where there's like a veil of professionalism that's protecting you. And I think that these community networks are so vital, not only within the UK, right, but on a global scale as well. Because when you have places where maybe the network has been around longer and it's more mature, that they become a resource for countries that are developing their networks for the first time, perhaps. So I've had folks reach out to me from around Europe who are just now wanting to start Bi Plus specific events out there, like within their network, and we've been able to share resources so they're not starting from ground one. Then we also become kind of a beacon or a network for people to talk to in places where they can't be out. They can reach out to people through our internet. That's really cute.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Well done. Okay. We're pretty good for time. We have 15 minutes, and I'm going to stop talking so we have even more than a couple more minutes more than that. I think we had decided on a couple of follow-up questions, but I guess in terms of time and what you've been hearing from other members of the panel, now it would be really great if you could comment, Charlene, about what you think would create safer workplaces for LGBTQI plus women and non-binary people, particularly in the markets where you've done a lot of capacity building. Through your consultancy, you've been into a lot of firms, and I'm just kind of wondering what that would, what you've learned from that, and what you might want to share. And take 3 minutes. Is that okay? Can you do that in 3 minutes? Yes. Perfect. Go ahead. So Charlene needs the mic.
Okay.
Good. Yes. Excellent. Good to go.
All right. So Danica and I used to be colleagues in one of the big fours. We will not mention the name.
So discreet of you.
So I have to say, and that's the reason why I said that, because when I joined that firm in 2017, I believe, this is what I didn't know. I didn't know that there were inclusive benefits and policies, because it's a global network. And so the first week I joined, we have a bunch of papers that we have to fill in, the forms that we have to fill in, and there's a question that asks, "Are you married?" And I had just gotten married like 2 years, and I wasn't sure. And this is in China. I wasn't sure if I should take yes, because I was so proud that I'm married. I really wanted to say yes. So I took the risk, and I thought, okay, what's the worst? I don't get the job anymore. But I take yes. And then the second question, the follow up question was, "Do you have a marriage certificate?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I have," and I sent it in. 2 weeks later, I received two insurance cards, one for me and one for my wife. And I was completely I was taken by surprise, and everybody around me was shocked. I asked some very close colleagues at the time. I said, "Did you know that firm is so inclusive?" And nobody had the idea. Now, to answer your question, Leanne, why I say this story is to answer your question. I think companies, corporations, when you have these policies, right? Please, please do and tell your employees. You can do that because you are hiring this person, and you have, I think most of you will already have diverse, inclusive policy, benefits, regulations. You can implement that, and you can put it out there for employees to know. Because once I started telling everybody, but friends around me, and they immediately, the first thing they said was, "I want to work for this firm." So the thing is, we do have global policies, and many of the international MNCs are in the Western countries, the US, Europe, the UK, and these companies and your companies, I'm sure, have locations and footprint in Asia and in some very conservative situations. But I know for a fact, and I have been in these situations and these backgrounds before, companies can make a difference, and they can help their employees. Now, again, I have to say, having this policy doesn't mean that you need to out your employees, or your employees need to come out, but it provides that space, the opportunity for them, if should they require it and one day would like to come out to you, that opportunity.
Just as a quick follow-up, do you notice a big difference between global corporates that have a footprint in your region and basically domestic or national corporations?
Actually, it's also the reverse. Domestic corporations, if they need to have their location, their footprints outside of conservative countries, actually they need to put these kind of inclusive benefits and clauses into their employee handbook and guidebook. So it does work both ways. So slowly, I think one is influencing the other, and the other can also counter-influence everybody around them.
Well, that's good to know, because a lot of people think that it can't work that way, so thank you. Z, I'm wondering, there are a couple questions that we thought would be great to speak to, and I'm just wondering if you would like to say more about the kind of environment that you work in, that you find yourself in the Caribbean, and actually we spoke a little bit about behaviors that are expected, and I think that'd be helpful for people in this event to know a little bit more about, and to also talk about what would create more open and safe spaces. We have time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the Caribbean is it's just not there where we talk about LGBT inclusion in the workplace as much. What I will say though is that there is a protection on the basis of sexual orientation in Barbados, from the Barbados, the labor. I'm hearing an echo is kind of distracting me. But being out in the workplace, in typical Barbadian workplaces or Caribbean workplaces, I could even say, is not something that is that happens a lot. At the same time, I think a lot of queer people and lesbians and not gender non-conforming lesbians are employed. We don't talk about these things very openly. Perhaps amongst friends at work, but we don't have those employee resource groups and so on. Obviously, companies like EY and so on that are based in Barbados will have those and will create little oases of inclusion. But typical Barbadian businesses, it depends from person to person, employer to employee, and based on your supervisor or whatever. But we don't have a culture of having visible queer people. There's some people though I in media, so it depends. I know there are a few people in media who are out and open and very celebrated, and you see spots of this across the region. In cultural institutions, media institutions, sometimes tourism is also an oasis because you get so many people coming in to hotels and so on that creates a kind of space of inclusion, because you're then forced to interact with people of every different walks of life. So that empowers employees to also be themselves. And this is the kind of work that we're trying to do with Pink Coconuts, because we recognize that in the middle is an employer who wants to branch out and have all of these diverse travelers, but what are you doing for your employees there, and how can then your employees be a resource, although we know that there's some level of labor, but be a resource and also be able to affect their colleagues to create inclusive spaces in the tourism and travel industries. And what does that mean for travelers coming in and employees? So we have the employer at the middle. We're saying, hey, there are travelers coming, but you also have these LGBT staff and these lesbian and bisexual staff that need to feel empowered. How can you benefit from outside, but also, so it's like that strategy that we've always been playing, and we're seeing it working. So yeah, come to Barbados and I'll tell you where to go.
We're going to clap for the strategies that work. No, I knew it was working, so well done, because I know you've been doing that for a while. I'm trying to push that forward. Where to start with the complexity of the parts of the world that you have, the ELC is covering. I mean, I'm just wondering if you could comment a little bit more about the lack of data information and, I mean, you're a researcher, you're an advocate, in terms of where the corporate sector might be helpful on that front to actually tackle this whole problem of precarious employment and entry-level points. So, I mean, I think innovation's needed there.
Yeah, and I also think a little bit of courage is needed there, in the sense that I agree very much with what Denisa was saying. Giving money, providing funding is very key in this moment, especially for research. We know that there is very little data. I was at the UN, at the Commission on the Status of Women, and we had a consultation with other LGBTQ activists on what, on the big things that are lacking. There were many asks in terms of advocacy, but throughout all people that were there from every part of the world, everyone was saying, we need data. And data is not there. It's very difficult to convince academia to care about lesbians. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult because we are perceived as a niche, we are perceived as a part of the community who is, okay, doing well, who cares, everything is fine. It's this like, we are like the part of the community who is kind of taking care of everyone, and then no one is actually looking into how we are. So there is a lot that I think can be done in the sense of supporting research, supporting university and academia in doing more about research. And then there is a lot in what can be done in supporting civil society organizations who are working on the field and with the communities, because that's something that is very needed. And we know that it's not always easy for corporations, especially big corporations, to interact with those communities, especially those that are maybe more radical politically. But I don't think everyone needs to do every part of the job. So if there is organizations who are willing, and there are a lot who are willing to work with corporations, then those corporations, I think, are in a good position to try to support lesbians and LGBTI women. Because I think that this is something that would a little bit change also the game. Because LGBTI organizations don't get money from governments, even in, or very rarely get money from governments, even in very supportive, very open country. Imagine, of course, in countries that are not supportive. So there is a real need to, I think, step up a little our game in terms of funding. And in terms of research, I also think that really researchers and academia can do more. Of course, the other issue is that often academia, like researchers who are part of the community, are also in precarious situation. They are not like in position in academia where they are able to take the decision. They are able to influence the direction in which certain things are done or not. And therefore, they cannot stick their neck out too much. And that's why it's important that maybe a push from the outside come and kind of support the ones from the inside that would like to do this work and are not always able to do it. And finally is, of course, the issue of getting data not only from UK, Sweden, and Denmark, and Netherlands. Because that's where our data is. Let's be completely clear with you. If you look at the data, I think that a big majority of the data come from very progressive country. UK is still a progressive country compared to the others, even if I know that you had some issue. Very concerning one.
Some issues.
Very concerning one, but and so you have to be careful, really. Please. But indeed, I think that there is a need for also having a look at what is happening in Eastern Europe, in the Balkan region, in Southern Europe, and in Central Asia.
I mean, thank you for that. I think that that really also resonates with my experience having done activist work for 30 years. You need to create your own information and data because governments that stand against us, they're definitely not going to boost. And what I always like is saying, you show me your data, I'll show you mine, because I know that we've got lots more. And it's going to be very convincing. So it's down to you now. We've got a couple minutes left, and I'm just wondering if there's any further reflections you have about what employers could do to create safer working environments.
Yeah, I think visibility is huge. So EY has our lanyards. We have all kinds of different flags. We're creating magnets right now to paste up to our metal lockers. And I really think that visibility is, it just makes people feel safe and comfortable and confident in coming out. And I think coming out is one of the best things that we can do. Obviously, it's not possible everywhere due to safety concerns. But global corporations should be definitely looking at their policies and ensuring the safety of their employees everywhere.
We have 1 minute left, so I just really want to take that 1 minute to say thank you. I'm glad you survived the assault by the Westboro Baptist Church to join us today. I'm glad that you, as ELC, have grown into such a powerful and significant organization. Stonewall uses your advice regularly for our global projects. Z, it's great to see you again. Such success with Pink Coconuts. Yeah, I know, it's great what you've been doing. And Charlene, we're going to get to work together in the future. I'm really happy about that because what you're doing in Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia is really brilliant. And we can only wish you all the success in the world and basically let all of this group know about what it is that you're doing. This really hasn't been enough time for the richness of what it is that everyone on this panel is working on. But we're really super grateful to the hosts for putting this into the agenda and for giving those of us who work in this space for many hours and find great frustration, but also find great joy in the colleagues that we meet along the way. And if I keep talking, there's 4 seconds left because I want to reach on time. We're finished. Charmant. All over to you.
I hope you all enjoyed the actual real-time countdown from my friend Leanne there. So I have it on good authority that somewhere in the room, where have you gone, Natasha? There you are, is our amazing final keynote. So she doesn't need an introduction, really, but she is a complete badass and a fantastic inspirational speaker and author, and a lot of you will know her as an amazing journalist. To close off this day and lead us gently into drinking, anything, doesn't have to be alcohol, can be orange juice. The brilliant Natasha Devon. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Natasha. I'm probably best known for having a weekly radio show on LBC on Saturday evenings, sometimes referred to as the woke hour, which I find really offensive because it's 2 hours and people should know that. But when I'm not behind the mic at LBC, I go into schools and colleges throughout the world, mainly here in the UK, and I speak to teenagers about issues which are related to their mental health. And the way that I formulate the lessons that I do is by doing focus groups with teenagers and finding out what their concerns are and what would improve their day-to-day lives. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I was doing a focus group, and something that was coming through really strongly from the queer young people that I was talking to was that they wanted a difference in the way that their role models were presented to them. Because they were saying, we only really learn about queer people either in relationship and sex education or during LGBTQ History Month. And what we would like is for somebody to be presented to us as a role model, but where their queerness isn't centered. We want to learn about scientists and authors and politicians and sports people and writers, and for it to be, oh, by the way, this person is also a queer person, to reflect the reality that we're everywhere and contributing to society. And that was the point where I thought, oh, I can help with that, because I am, and always have been, bisexual, but at the time, I wasn't out, very much like Charlene. I'm something of a baby queer. So that's when I started just dropping it into the talks that I do, just saying, oh, and by the way, I am bisexual, in case those young people needed to see me existing and on good days thriving as a bisexual person. Sometimes people ask me what stopped me from coming out before, particularly those people, and there were lots of them who went, yeah, we knew. What stopped you from coming out before? And there were a few things. One was the realization that there's a difference between orientation and behavior. I live in a world where it's much, much easier. There's more opportunities for heterosexual dating than there are for queer dating. But that's not a reflection of who I'm attracted to or who I have the capacity to love. So making that differentiation in my head was a big part of it. There was definitely a fear of how I would be perceived working in education. That, I think, is a hangover from Section 28, the ripples of which are still being felt, and there are lots of people out there who would just love to usher it back in, unfortunately. There was a fear that I would be seen as attention-seeking. That, I think, is a very particularly biphobic trope. And that has come to pass, actually. About 2 years ago now, during Pride Week, I dedicated about 5 minutes of my broadcasting career to talking about the reality of being a bisexual woman in Britain in 2024. I did this tiny little monologue. I still get emails from men, it's always men, saying, just wanting to impress upon me how much they don't care about my sexuality. And I'm like, it seems like it, babe. And to stop shoving it down their throats as well, to which I think, you should be so lucky. So that has come to pass, but it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. So on balance, it's been worth it. But if I'm really honest, what stopped me from coming out before was mostly a fear that I would be giving up some of my power. And the reality has been, for the past 6 or 7 years, that yes, I've given up some of my privilege, but in terms of power, I feel like I actually have more. And a friend of mine I was talking to the other day put this really well. This friend of mine is a lesbian. She said, there is a paradox in being a lesbian. I wrote it down. This is how profound it was. She said, there's a paradox in being a lesbian, because on the one hand, you can feel like the world hates you. But on the other hand, you live in a patriarchal world which is run by men, so you don't care. She then went on to say, I mean, thank you for clapping, not my thought, hers. But she went on to say something which really resonated with me. She said, not being valued in the same way as other people can be useful because nothing you could ever do would change that, and that removes the necessity to try. And when she said that to me, I actually felt envious because she arrived at that conclusion so much quicker than I did. I was 17 when I was first introduced to the phenomenon that is Eddie Izzard, and I've been a huge fan of her ever since and her work. And for those of you who are fellow fans, you will know that there's an early stand-up show that she did where she talks about being a lid thinker, where you're not quite in the box, but you're not altogether out of the box either. And I remember hearing that and thinking, I'm a lid person, because I am of mixed ethnic heritage, but most people who meet me assume I'm white, and I receive a lot of white privilege as a result of that. I am a great big lady, but I've never considered myself fat, so I don't really feel like I belong in the plus-size community. I have a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder, which means that technically I'm disabled, but my disability is invisible, and I'm bisexual. So everything about me that could make me the victim of oppression or could subject me to prejudice is theoretically hideable. I can choose to hide it. And it's like wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small. It's really uncomfortable, but it's doable. I grew up in a really small town in Essex, which very much lives by the rules that you would imagine when you hear that, the codes that you would imagine. I had a conversation with it about Susie Ruffle, and she very accurately described it as a town that's not shy about a personalized number plate. So that's where I come from. And there was this moment in my life where I thought I could be the queen of this town. But that never would have been true power. It took me a while to work out that that was a crown that I didn't want, that I never wanted. True power is the freedom to inhabit who you are without apology and to take up space, and to know, crucially, that you can do that without it affecting your security or your safety. And I think, actually, that the world of body image activism, which was my entry point into mental health, has quite a lot to teach us about this in this regard. It's so weird to me, being a woman who also fancies women. I know that these rules that we're taught from such an early age about what makes women attractive are 99% total bollocks. Emulating a beauty standard has hardly any impact on your sex life and no impact whatsoever on your lovability. But what it will give you, if you are able to emulate the current beauty standard, is a proximity to power. It will give you an approximation of power. But it's a power that's dependent. It's dependent not only on the male gaze, but also on your ability to remain small and young and quiet and grateful. And the biggest change that I have noticed is how women and non-binary people are stepping up now to vocally counter that narrative and to change that reality. We have started celebrating each other's diverse bodies and choices. And that's huge. I was talking to my mum, went back to Essex just the other week, and she was saying to me that in the 70s and 80s, she never heard a woman tell another woman that she was beautiful. She said, we were only ever complimented by another woman if we'd lost weight. That was it. And then in the 90s, when I came of age, we had this weird hybrid zig-a-zig-ah feminism. Seem to remember that it revolved mainly around insisting that you were not like other girls. And then in the 2000s, the same question was asked incessantly. And that question was, can you be a feminist and... Can you be a feminist and wear red lipstick? Can you be a feminist and shave your legs? Can you be a feminist and have had a boob job? And recently, thanks in no small part to social media, women and non-binary people have come together, it feels to me, to collectively decide to just sack all that nonsense off and to acknowledge that there is no right way to do gender and to support each other's right to be authentically ourselves. Now, patriarchal power structures depend on keeping women and non-binary people distracted by creating reasons for us to fight amongst ourselves. But we know that you don't burn down patriarchy by using other women and non-binary people as kindling. And that's why the people who benefit from patriarchy are so quick to dismiss and demonize any kind of attempt at inclusivity. Because they know, as soon as we all club together to fight the common enemy, they are fucked. They know that. Now, I don't want to overexcite you. We're not there yet. But it feels like we're on the trajectory. So, to all the women and non-binary people in the room today, in the meantime, whilst we're getting there, I wanted to let you know that that feeling of not fitting in, or being othered, or sometimes even that feeling of being despised, that is actually your superpower. And I also wanted to let you know that right now it feels overwhelming. It's good to be reminded that in Britain, in some ways, we're ahead of other countries in terms of LGBTQ rights, but it does feel like we're moving backwards a bit at the moment, particularly with the culture war against trans people and the knock-on impact that that's having on the entire community, this enabling of regressive attitudes and hate speech and even violent crime. It can feel really overwhelming. So I wanted to share with you something that I was told when I was a baby activist back in the day. Someone said to me, think of it like a patchwork quilt. You've got your patch. And on its own, your patch might not look like much. But when we sew all of our patches together, we create something massive and all-encompassing. And that's why I think it's so brilliant that the slogan for today's conference is united, not uniform. By including each other, by welcoming and celebrating each other, we increase the size and the power of our patchwork quilt. And that brings me on to the last thing that I wanted to say to you, because I do have a little bit of bisexual imposter syndrome being here today. So it is so wonderful to be welcomed into this community, to this group of queer women, to feel part of this movement. So I wanted to finish by saying thank you so much for having me. Thanks. Thank you, Natasha. That made me cry a bit. I've been crying a lot today. It's because I'm getting older and that happens. So, you've reached the end of the formal part of this conference. We have time and space, thanks to the incredible hosting of our sponsors, BT Group, to talk and reflect and get to know each other a bit better. I'm going to say just two things, really. I want to thank everyone for coming, for joining us online. I want to particularly thank everyone for sharing their thoughts, their ideas and their vulnerability on all of our panels and keynote stages, and to organisations like Trans in the City and Outspoken Speakers who have helped curate some of the space today. And finally, one big round of applause for the whole team here at BT Tower, who are unbelievable and have made us so incredibly welcome and incredibly supported, and in a conversation about what it feels like to be an out LGBTQIA woman or non-binary person, how hard that can be to come to kind of the heart of a big corporation and to come to one of the most iconic buildings in London and probably in the UK and feel so supported and welcomed has been a real privilege. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your time. And it's been great having you all.